Tom, we weren't even going to have this on the radar today until about, an hour ago, and
Yep.
up shows Doug Ford, who says this.
I made a promise to you that I wouldn't touch the Greenbelt. I broke that promise. And for that, I am very, very sorry. It was a mistake to open the Greenbelt as a first step to earn back your trust. I'll be reversing the changes we made and won't make any changes to the Greenbelt in the future.
Boy, talk about a 180, huh?
It looked like it hurt, though, when he was saying it.
Oh, yeah, and he's swallowing himself whole. So let's start off with the good part. Like, credit to Doug Ford for doing the thing that we all often ask politicians to do, which is to admit they lied or got something wrong or cheated or went back on a promise. I mean, compare and contrast with François Legault, who, when he was asked if he would apologize for the so-called third link between the two shores at Quebec City, said, no, it's because the situation changed and I didn't really lie. But, of course, it was the prime promise of their 2018 victory and their 2022 victory in the Quebec City region, where they ran the table. So Doug Ford, at least, is doing something that most politicians won't do. He's acknowledging he got it wrong, and he acknowledged that he broke a promise. And he when he says he's very, very sorry, it's hard not to believe him. But let's drill down onto the politics of this. He's not stepping down, but two of his ministers have lost their jobs. Minister Clark, who was in charge of housing, was forced to step down after doing everything he could to cling to his job. And then, I don't know if you saw this one on your radar screen yesterday, but Khalid Rashid, who was his Minister of Business Services or some such thing, had made a few mistakes in his testimony to the Integrity Commissioner, and he realized that, and he stepped down yesterday too. And this is a howler for if there was a Canadian movie, it would involve this, because it was Minister Khalid Rashid and one of his developer buddies who was in on the Greenbelt and another guy having massages at the same time in Las Vegas. Canadian movie, eh?
Oh,
I mean, you can
What?
just imagine. So this is what Doug Ford has brought. So he's not stepping down. He's going to stick around. But I can tell you right now, there's little to no chance this guy will ever win another mandate, for the good and simple reason that people will give him a break. They'll let him finish off his work, but he's never going to be trusted again by the voters of Ontario. That I'm quite sure of.
So I want to make sure you think that if Doug Ford runs in the next Ontario provincial election, he doesn't have a shot in hell of winning?
No, I don't, and I don't even think he's going to run, because he knows that. And you get to do this. You get to swallow yourself whole and apologize profusely, but you don't get to come back. This was an incredible lie. I mean, this hard and fast promise not to touch the Greenbelt turned into a boondoggle where people close to the Conservative Party would have stood to make, and this isn't my number, Aaron, this is the number from the Auditor General of Ontario, $8.6 billion, with a B, $8.6 billion on this little land deal. This would be like taking a bunch of agricultural land. But here in Quebec, we've got this whole zoning process throughout the province to protect agricultural land. It'd be the same sort of thing. Somebody being on the inside to bring out tens of thousands of acres of agricultural land that they could develop. It's what we do in Quebec with wetlands. It's something that we've been fighting for years on the environmental side. And yet, since François Legault was there, this is the real number, 98% of the requests to go against the rules on wetlands have been granted by the CAC government. So this is not new, but it is something new when you see it on this scale. And a premier of a province having to walk it back.
I was thinking, Tom, how much people love a good apology, though. And I was thinking,
Comeback story,
Ford's
sure.
cronies who are not going to make a whole lot of money in this deal, but who got him voted in, basically, would want him to get in again for the hopes that maybe the next time they will make a whole lot of money off of some sort of deal like this if they don't get caught.
Well, let's talk about those cronies. Let's talk about the people who stood to make those billions of dollars. Do you think that they're at home tonight saying, oh, well, what a fine fellow that Doug Ford for apologizing and putting all the land back? Or because they spent hundreds of millions hoping to make billions. Mm-hmm. So they're out of pocket a whole bunch of money. And they now own precious wetlands. They own the top agricultural land in the Greater Toronto area. And they own, lots of habitat for wildlife. But they don't own anything that's worth anything to them, because the only thing that they know how to do is to build stuff. Yeah. So I'm not sure they're going to be too happy with Doug right now. Not too happy at all.
Let me shift from Doug Ford to Justin Trudeau, who today had to face the music, the press. Even though he's in New York, a lot of the questions obviously had to do with this whole India situation. Yes. And I will tell you, Tom, I'm sure you've heard some of it. To me, this was a masterclass in political, I don't know what.
Avoidance?
Baffle gag, call it whatever you will.
Yes.
Every question, didn't matter what the question was. They were all answered basically the same way, and that answer really wasn't an answer. Take a listen to this. So this is him, and pay attention to the long pauses in this answer as he tries to figure out where he's going.
As I said on Monday, there are credible reasons to believe that agents of the government of India were involved in the killing of a Canadian on Canadian soil.
Okay, it took a long time to get that out. It reminds me of standing up in class when you didn't do work the night before and they asked you for the answer and you had to make it up as you went along.
What? That's good preparation for a life in politics, apparently. So.
Wow. What'd you think?
I think that since Monday, he's been doing everything he can to climb down. Look, he knew this stuff long before Monday's opening of Parliament. He didn't learn that an hour before Parliament opened. He used his best theatrical tones to announce to Canadians and to every single microphone and camera in the country, because it was the opening day of Parliament, that this had happened and that, he had evidence of that. Pierre Poilievre, showing that he really is not a slouch at this political game, had one question. Fine, we'll take your word for it, but we need some facts. We need some evidence. What have you got to back this up? And that's where this whole thing is falling apart. Of all things, I was invited to take part in a panel show on one of the main television networks in India today, because somebody had been following my commentary here, and I've gotten another invitation to be on Indian television to talk about this stuff. And where Trudeau is having so much trouble right now is he the next day, so on Tuesday, he was starting to say, well, we want the Indian government to take it seriously. And then yesterday it was, well, we don't want this to become a big thing. And today, of course, the Indian government is saying, no more visas being issued for people to come to India. And they've raised the stakes because they sense that he's got nothing. Now, if Trudeau does have something, he's going to have to start explaining it to the Canadian public. The words chosen in that press conference, and I think that those were intentional dramatic pauses, honestly. He's trying to say, well, I can't tell you everything I know, but we have credible reason to believe. So if he does, then he better talk about it. On the side of India, what I was getting off this show is that people are hopping mad about Canada's attitude to what they consider terrorists. And they're saying, you're mollycoddling terrorists. Think of what Sweden did when it was trying to block Turkey getting into NATO.
Yeah.
I mean, it was their way of saying, to Sweden, very nice of you to hold on to these guys, but we consider them terrorists. So these are issues in diaspora communities that come up in large, in welcoming countries like Sweden and Canada, countries that open the door to people. Then all of a sudden they realize, we haven't really checked that much who and what we're dealing with here. None of this will ever excuse a foreign government murdering a citizen of Canada on Canadian soil. And frankly, I believe Trudeau's got evidence about that. But right now, he's losing the fight because he hasn't been able to put any of that evidence on the table. And by the way, he doesn't have to give away the secrets of how we got that information. Apparently, the person who was killed was meeting weekly, according to his family. He was having weekly meetings with Canadian security authorities because they were that concerned that somebody was going to try to kill him. And so they knew about it. They did what they could to help him, but he was still killed in the final result. Canadians need to know what happened here. And it's not enough for the Prime Minister to have dramatic pauses or theatrical moments in the House of Commons. He's got to start explaining this. He's got to be more transparent. And he doesn't have to give away, how we gather our security information, but he does have to give the information that we have to the extent possible.
Totally agree. Let's squeeze this in quickly. We've got a new federal political party, the Canadian Future. Dominic Carty was speaking with the station today. Do we need another party, Tom?
It's always refreshing. Dominic's an old friend because he used to head up the NDP in New Brunswick when I was the head of the federal party. And he was one of the people who backed me for the leadership in that role. Look, I think that he's onto something when he says, Pierre Poilievre is not for people who, even though he's a conservative in terms of economic stuff, socially he's more progressive. And he quit, Blaine Higgs' cabinet on an issue of principle, much to his credit. This is the same Blaine Higgs who, has gone after the French-speaking minority in New Brunswick and tried to lower their rights by many different ways, and is now using LGBTQ issues as a political sword. So it's a very unseemly party. So he walked away from that, but he looks at Poilievre and he's saying, well, this is the same sort of stuff. So I really don't want that. But I think maybe they would have had a better chance before Poilievre became leader because people demonized him. Now that Poilievre's lost the tie and checked out his hair and thrown out the glasses and changed his tone and is really starting to attract a whole bunch of Canadians, I don't think that they've got that much of a market. But the same way Maxime Bernier is always going to be there needling Poilievre from the right, saying, oh, you don't go far enough. Yesterday, he went to the protests in Ottawa and said there's no such thing as a trans person. I mean, he knows how to get his name in the papers. And Dominic Carty and the people with him, they're all smart people. They're all experienced people. They're just saying, this is not my Conservative Party. That's their main message. But I don't think that it's going to have much lift, certainly not in the next year and a half, 2 years as we head into the next election.
And that's where we will leave it. Tom, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the day. Have fun on Indian television. That should be interesting.